And welcome to Pen Podcast with your co-host Nico Penguin of Pen for Hire NYC. Today we are joined by A.R Mirabal. Thank you so much for joining us today.
I love that pronunciation. You got it 100% right.
No, yeah, I saw you were Dominican.
Yeah. I
Gotta make
didn't
sure.
realize that Pen for Hire was based in NYC. Shout out. That's dope. I lived out there for a little bit when I was younger.
Oh, so where are you calling from?
Well, right now I'm actually not too far from Boston. That's where I went to college. It's where I've been posted up for a bit, but I've moved around a lot in life. No, I was in the military. I guess my mom just liked different vantage points from time to time, I guess.
Was she Dominican?
Oh yeah. We're all Dominican.
Yeah, Dominicans are nomads by nature.
Oh, nomadic, yeah, just following different herds around, but this herd just means like a better job, which I get the hustle.
Yes.
Um, yeah, it was awesome. It was awesome. At the time, I didn't like it, but it's one of those things that I definitely wouldn't go back on ever. And it just gives you a lot of perspective as a writer. That's one of the best things you can ever develop, honestly.
Oh, I was gonna say, so you wouldn't want to go through that. So do you think that it didn't push you to be a writer, or because of those situations you're like, dang, I gotta write about this, or these situations inspired my writing?
All right. So I'm gonna go like crazy meta for a second. Like,
Oh,
have you
go
ever
for it.
played like a video game where you're designing a character? You know what I mean? Any video game that you design a character.
RPGs, yep.
Exactly. MMOs, things like that. So when you're creating the
Yeah.
character, you like you make the stats like the charisma, tenacity, whatever
All
it is.
those attributes,
Like
yep.
I truly believe that like humans, like when they're born in like the womb, those things are just RNG'd. Like all those like things are just like set, and then we pop out with a certain thing. I truly believe that people that are writers were kind of at least born with if not the talent, the desire to write. And I think the desire for something like is what pushes you. Know what I mean? If Michael Jordan didn't like basketball, would he have been where he was? Like if he was that fire but just didn't like it, would he have been Michael Jordan that we know? Or would he have been like a really, really aggressive accountant? Know what I mean? Like, like those are things that are just up in the air. So to me, I think the whole writing aspect was something that I just was kind of developed, like reading or just that was already in me. But I think the moving around is what gave me perspective. The idea that, every time that you move around, people in that area say that area is like dope and the other ones surrounding it suck. But then when you talk to them, like, on a one-to-one level, you become friends with those people in like that new area. They're always like, oh man, this place sucks. Nothing to do. It's like, yeah, but that's everywhere. You move to LA, they're saying the same thing. Like that's everywhere. So when you're understanding those things, that the idea that the grass really rarely is greener on the other side, and that just like what takes a human to those places, I think that's what inspires me. As far as like, I think that's what moving around gave to me anyway.
I mean, because I was thinking that one of the reasons that it inspired you was because you're a sci-fi. And so if you didn't like any of the places that you were, it's like, well, I got to go to outer space because none of the places down here are for me. Damn. That's what I was thinking. That's what I was thinking.
We could even take this a little bit deeper. We could make this a whole therapy thing. I'll lay down. I got a couch. But because I just started immediately thinking, it was like, well, if I can be 100% honest, because I was born in the Dominican Republic. When the whole space thing became like, I remember the first time it like really hit my mind is when we had just came to Miami, just having left Dominican Republic. And when I wanted to leave, I mean, coming to America was jarring. It's hilarious now writing English now, because when I first learned English, it felt like dirty. Like I liked my tongue. Know what I mean? I spoke Spanish. I was born Spanish. I didn't like speaking English. I didn't. And then, just over time, it grows on you and the culture grows on you. And like, I 100% am like in this country. When I go to other places, people don't go like, oh, you're Dominican, right? It's like, oh, American. It's like, yeah, all right, I'll take it. But I think really that's when the NASA thing hit. When I went to Miami, that was the first time that I asked my mom to get me like a little NASA set. And I remember like she got like a shitty one from dollar store or whatever. But I loved it. That was alone just blew my mind away. And then, you add in Buzz Lightyear from Toy Story. The hits just kept on going. And then when you start reading into, Percy Jackson, which isn't necessarily sci-fi, but it's more like, historically bound, which I love history too.
Right.
And then
Historical fiction.
yeah, then you add in all those things like later on Asimov when you get a little bit older, Philip K. Dick. I mean, it just goes on and on and on, and that really is what just brought me to. If you ask me, like, what brought me into sci-fi, just getting consumed by it. You know, like I guess it was that just escapism, just being able to like go back and really just start thinking about like, man, imagine if this thing happened and how would the people react to like this crazy thing happening. I think that's what is the heart of sci-fi. That's why I love it so much.
Were there particular stories, books, movies, or just movements, culture shifts, shows that got you to actually not just see the sci-fi, but also take it for yourself and be like, man, this was amazing, but I would have done it this and this and this? Because I know there must have been something that was a catalyst that just you were just like, man, that's good, but I know I could do a little bit better.
All right, well, the inspiration for backwards. The inspiration for my book Allegory of the End. Well, I can't say the inspiration because I inspired like
there's like one of one
because I'm telling you there's thousands of things I brought together, but one of the things that I remember just started getting my brain churning was right in the summer following my freshman year of college, going to school for engineering. So it was the first time that I was like around like fellow nerds, even with how much I moved around. You know how it is. There's like, 2 or 3 kindreds in the crowd, and like it's very hard to even find them because of just clicks and whatnot, right?
Yeah.
So I finally got to college. I'm like around with my nerds, and like they finally start talking me about Star Wars. Exactly. And Star Wars, I mean, like that, I didn't grow up in those type of neighborhoods that Star Wars be the conversation, like would be in the conversation. I had never watched it. So I finally get to college, and I'm like, I'm gonna watch Star Wars. I never heard about it. Then I literally binged the 6 movies within a couple days. And I remember when I finished it, I was like, all right, that's a dope story, but I like imagine if you took like the idea of like Vader and the whole like Anakin thing, if like you layered them on top of one another instead of splitting it up. Because when you do something like that with a prequel, then people just assume there's like a retcon thing. But what if right from the beginning you gave this idea of like, introducing Vader, and then scene 2 was a flashback when they're talking about Anakin? Like, how would that, like, from a reading standpoint, not even a writing one, that would, to me, I felt like that would give a writer a different like point of view, a reader a different point of view, a different way of interpreting, because instead of just automatically, gray, black, white is this way, good and bad, everything is like set, you immediately get an idea of like, oh, everything is gray, and then I think that in itself gives great leeway into perspective, because the entire book is split up between 2 characters and very meticulously put in a way that point of view is made from one character doesn't look the same from another. So when you read one chapter, it could point you in a different light, but when you read the next one, then it's a completely different vantage point. And it even goes further because I plotted everything to be almost the Marvel universe, where everything is kind of spawned out and connected to one another. So even when you read a sequel, a spin-off, even things like that, like those little lingering questions that like weren't answered in like, volume 1 or volume 2 will be answered in the continuing saga of the Death of Order series.
Dang. So you really did take that inspiration from a whole bunch of different sci-fis and space operas.
Yeah, I mean, I always found space operas were funny, like that term. I understood it for Star Wars because like the way that they talked was like an opera. It was very like, like very drawn out prose and like speaking in a certain way, which, if I can be honest, is one thing that I actually, as far as like seeing something and being like, oh, I can be a little different. One of the things that I always grew up on noticing in writing, especially when you get to like sci-fi, specifically sci-fi. I don't know why they always do it like this. Maybe it's because the person that was like writing it was so like of high intellect that they couldn't like dumb themselves down. But even like when they would have a conversation between like, 2 13-year-olds, the 13-year-old would be like, oh yes, I inquire that such a fate could befall upon us and the stars are falling. It's like, all right, when has 13-year-olds ever talked like that? You read Ender's Game. I mean, I guess that's not a great example because they were like raised to be crazy smart at that age, but like
they were like IQ of 200.
Yeah, exactly. But the point is that like it
The
never felt like the
average 13-year-old doesn't
conversations.
speak like that. Yeah.
Yeah, but even though when they were between adults, we all live in the world. Not everyone is talking like that unless you're a scientist and you're in the lab. Because I'm talking to scientists that talk like, we're all
Normal. Yeah.
we're all normal. You know what I mean? So one thing that I strive for was to actually have language and that type of just familiarity between like friends and camaraderie be a little more, I guess, in line with what we're used to, as opposed to like what I've always seen in the books that I read as a kid. And that's also the thing of like culture. I know in my book I very specifically like designed it that I didn't want to have an idea of like darker skin or lighter skin. So the way that I envisioned it, I actually got inspired from like this one picture that became like really popular in like 5-6 years ago. It was like of like what humans would be in like 100 years. That like like when all races just mix together and like it's just
the
like,
melting pot.
Yeah, so I love that idea. So I was like, all right, imagine a future that we're already at that level. There's no idea of like exactly. There's nothing like that. Racism is like, I mean, how can you have racism? There's no like, you can't look at your skin and be like, oh, hey, there's nothing. Like it's all the same thing. It's all like a melting pot. So when you take away that, what else would divide us? Because that's human nature, right? So like when you take away that, what other things would come up and creep up that would still find a way to divide us, if any? Is the idea of utopia like true? If we had all the things ever, would we be happy?
Some deep questions.
Yeah, that's why I love sci-fi, honestly.
Are those the underlying themes of the story, or those are just some of the additional inspirations for the story?
Oh no, I mean all the like. I would say that the one thing that I stayed true in is like that heavy symbolism, that heavy, underlying thread that when you're just reading it, because I love comedy too. I don't know if you can like pick it up from my personality, but the writing is as light as it can. I try to make it be. Obviously there are the philosophical bits where they like philosophize about the universe, but I try to keep that at a minimum, especially after editing. If you read the book before that, you would have thought it was like a term paper, but after editing and like kind of like breaking it down, be like, all right, you don't have to like philosophize for 4 paragraphs. 2 sentences written correctly can convey the same idea if you just put it in a certain way that the reader picks up on the rest. Know what I mean? So I just did that for the most, and like just made it action packed and like the story moving along. But there definitely are those little threads that if you were to pick at them and start like putting everything into heavy consideration, it's insane. I mean, I went so deep into it that even like the coloring of the book, black and white, is like serves a purpose. The whole yin and yang of things.
Yeah, and I gotta say that cover is so like wow.
Yeah, it took a lot to get to that level. I have no shame in saying that. I think I went through 4 or 5 different covers and spent just money that only me and the IRS need to know. Know what I mean?
Right.
Just way too much. And I can tell you very confidently that a good 95% of it went to waste. I didn't even use anything for promotion wise. But when I finally got that one, it just felt like everything that I wanted it to be, even to the point that, spoiler alert, one of like the things that happens it's prelude. I mean, there's not even a spoiler at all. It's literally in the book blur, the synopsis of the book. They end up in a black hole. The characters end up in a black hole. How? That's up to you. That's the whole thing of like the book. Buy the book, by the way. But
let them know where they can find it.
Well, Amazon, my website, neotino.net. But for the most part, like outside of that, because I'll definitely like get into all the promotions in like a second. It was just the idea of like, if you look at it, well, I don't know if you get like if you have it up. I'm actually referring to the picture that's like right here.
Yeah, that stick figure concept, like it's so good.
And what it is, if you see
space,
what it is actually is like so if you notice, you see how the person at the bottom is like cut in half, and it's like it's actually real instead of being like, in numbers how it is.
Yeah, when I first saw it, I was like, is that done correctly, or am I looking at this the wrong way? Like what?
No, so like that line actually represents the black hole. So he's falling into it, and that is the singularity right there. Yeah, and even like the whole thing that like that like the actual background itself, the black, is actually just numbers. It's ones and zeros, binary. Even that speaks
Oh my
highly to the
goodness!
nature of the
What? Are
book.
you kidding me?
No, it's binary. So that's like the whole point of it. So the universe,
Oh my
binary,
gosh! I just had to
when it
zoom in.
crosses, yeah,
Wow!
it's binary, but when it crosses the threshold, it becomes solid. So, what does that mean?
Wow! That's wow! I didn't see those small little intricacies. Even though you sent the large image directly to us, I didn't see the ones and zeros. Like wow! Because now I'm looking at the space particles. Those are also ones and zeros.
Yeah, and even like the stars are actually just ones.
Wow! It's like almost some sort of a matrix code.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And Matrix is definitely another inspiration. I mean, Matrix is, it's one of those like things that I don't think any sci-fi from here on out will never not be compared to either Star Wars or Matrix. I mean, it's everything that you want sci-fi to be. A little religion aspect, a little faith aspect, a little like mysteries of what the universe is at larger, mixed in with like crazy action scenes. I mean, it's what dreams are made of, honestly.
And now this is based off of some sort of a cosmic game of chess.
Yeah, and in a way, yes, definitely.
Because it's two teenagers that are pretty much engaging in, or are they're caught in a game of chess.
Yeah, I specifically worded like that because it's definitely something that they're caught up into. It's there's a line again, not that crazy of a spoiler, that when they first meet each other as children, because the book is divided. Again, the whole idea of perspective. It's when they're younger, they just met and they think that they just found like one of their best friends, and they go through traumatic events very
Mhm.
quickly after meeting one another. Which, as you know, nothing bonds quicker than trauma. So they become very close very quickly, and then the other half of the book is them 20 years later in their 30s, and they are very much at odds with one another. So it's the whole question of what has happened to take them from this height, this level. How has Zako risen to such power? How has Jid not done that at all? Like what has happened to Jid entirely? How has he not grown out of like those fears that he has as a child? It's just all those things brought together, and when they meet each other as a child, I specifically remember there is a line that Jid says, it's like, oh man, I don't know why, but there is just something about it, like I've met him before. Like
Hmm.
and it's one of those things that I think it like hits because I can't count the number of times that I felt like that when I've met a person that I just vibed with very quickly, and I was like, oh, maybe this is a thing. Like it goes like maybe this like ethereal. Maybe it goes secular. Maybe it goes like a little bit further than what we can just like comprehend just immediately with the limitation that we have of just being human, right? There's obviously 1,000 of things that we can't like interpret in our universe yet, but for now, this is what we got.
Wait, so you're saying in the book you describe or you explain why people have that kind of like, oh, I know you, or I think I know you. I just don't know why I know you.
Mm-hmm. Definitely get into that.
Ooh,
Yeah.
ooh. Oh, because
Well,
it's riddled with conspiracies I see here.
yeah. You see, that's definitely one of the things that I like. I love conspiracies, not in the idea of believing in them, but in the
Mm-hmm.
idea of just like,
The
man, that's a
what
fun
if?
idea.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
what if?
fun
Like
idea.
what
Yeah,
if?
that's great. Lizards
Oh,
running the government. All right, I'm with you. I'm not gonna go to anything.
man,
You're not gonna catch me in any place writing about anything. But we can talk about it in close quarters.
no,
No
I did want
recording
to ask. Yeah, I did want to ask you specifically because the Allegory of the End Volume 1, you mentioned that it came out last year during the summer solstice. And I wanted to ask you, why did you choose that specific event? Because you put it out there on that day and you were explicit. It was on this particular day, and I'm just like, why?
Yeah.
Is there a reason or just because?
No, there's a reason too. Like I said, I'm just one of the things that always pulled me into stories is when there's like that one little thread and you pull it and there's actually a thread that comes out. There's actually like, it's like, oh my
Oh,
god, this actually happens, and you keep on pulling and it's just like,
yeah,
oh,
yeah.
all these things do line up. I can't say explicitly why, but it definitely has to do with the numbers. I mean, it's 6/21, 2021. For anyone that's like into numerology, that definitely like adds up to like what's happening, and just everything as far as like the book. I mean, everything lines up. I remember even when I was plotting out the book, even the chapter, like the name of chapters. I mean the number of chapters. Excuse me. Even the number of the chapters, I plotted it out to make some type of coherent sense as far as everything goes.
Okay, so not only do you believe in the conspiracy, you create it as well.
My idea is that like especially when it comes to writing sci-fi, that you can't write for like you can't think that's going to be received like the Jersey Shore, like it's just going to be a popcorn thing that like everyone's going to be into. I think you need to like find your little niche. And I think conspiracy, like the conspiracy theory mind, is the type of person that just kind of like can't stop thinking about like that, like the next question afterwards. That is the person. That's my target audience. Know what I mean? That's what I'm aiming for. The type of people that just like can't not go with it. I mean, I even went as far as like, oh, perfect. So this is actually like a blueprint of technology within the book that I like fully designed from like an engineering standpoint.
Goodness.
Like you see, like there's the hub psych right there, which is like their mode of transportation. There's a little picture of how like the city itself like looks like, and it's actually like it's like an ad basically of like one of the sectors, which is one of the areas that they live in. Wow. Then you have same thing here, which is like actually looking for a job posting, which is actually referenced in the first chapter. And then this is like a hyper closet, which is literally like you wear an omni linen, which is just like kind of like a gray white type of like mesh that you like wear. You hop into this thing, you press your buttons, and it actually like forms to whatever you want to wear. It can become a long sleeve, it can become a short sleeve, become a vest. Anything that you want to dress in, you just change it, but it's only one actual physical linen that you're wearing. But it can be any outfit that you want it to be.
Wow, that's so crazy. How, like, whoa, like I'm just like, you created a whole book series, and on top of that, lined it up with numerology, lined it up multi-layered themes, synopsis, and then on top of that, you also created your own literal like what if technology to actual, hey, if this was real, this is what the job posting would look like, or these other technology. Like, wow, that's so crazy.
Well, again, it's like when I was a kid, I mean, I obviously played like certain video games, but the thing that always like really got to me was like MMOs, stories that you can like dive into it, and it wasn't just like it wasn't just the main quest. You could also like just trail off and take like a random side quest for like 4 days and just like dive into it. That's the type of stuff that I loved about books. And when I was like plotting out the book, I was thinking to myself, all right, well, I know I want all this technology. I know for a fact I already have like the basis set. How will I actually describe those things? If we were to write a book about this time period right now, but in the 1960s, how would you write about an iPhone to a person that's never had an iPhone? You couldn't just write your character saying, "Oh yeah, I picked up my phone and checked my IG." A person in 1960, like their head would explode. They'd be like, "What are we talking about?"
That's a great question. Wow.
So when I was like considering all those things, I figured that like, all right, either I would have to have like insane exposition dump every time I'd bring up a new technology, which would increase the page count by like hundreds of thousands and just be boring to read, or I could design these little blueprints in between the chapters to basically exfoliate the thing that's happening later. I don't know if exfoliate is the right word at all. Maybe I was like thinking about taking a shower. It's very hot out here, folks.
No. It's understandable because I'm thinking, wow, that actually does open up, especially for individuals who are visual aid and they can see it, or people that need to touch it. Like, wow, it's not just words. Like I can see it literally right there. I can feel it, and with the right enough funding, I could create it. Might not work as the idea, but even just having a concept turn into something more than just words is already radical in and of itself, because it's sci-fi. Like look at how Star Wars did with with the lightsaber, and you have people now
Yeah.
creating lightsabers and whatnot, and like you have a futuristic job posting. Like, what? That that's
But
amazing.
yeah, and like I think like the funnest part for me was actually when everything was said and done, and I was like trying to find, because they actually do fit within the chapters perfectly. There's 26 chapters, and there's about 30 or so graphics, so it just lines up perfectly with how everything in the book is set up. So, like I said in the first chapter, the character mentions a job posting for being, and this is the exact job posting for being a hyperway track operator. He mentions it, but it's just glossed over, right? So in normal sci-fi, it would just like your mind would wander. It's like, oh, I wonder what that is, and like have your own idea for what that is, and like just like go off on it, and then just keep reading, don't even think about it. But then when that chapter ends, you flip it, and there's literally a graphic of what that was, and now you have the visual aid of like, okay, wait a minute, and now I also like kind of put that in for like future readings as well. So like when you have that information of already what that technology is and you reread it, you're like, okay, now everything has come together. Now it's like a movie in my head because the technology is ascribed to a T. I mean, there's even when it's just straight when it's just a straight blueprint, it actually even has like little like lore of how that happened. Some rogue experiment develop this, like it even to that point, like with like dates and all those things.
Man, that's really thought out. How did you come up with that concept to actually create that? Was that already in your head, or did it like an editor or somebody just like whisper you something like, hey, listen, what would it be great if I could see what you're actually writing about, or you already had that figured out?
Well, I'm a pretty visual person. Like all the entire book was made by me. The formatting, the graphics, every single thing.
Oh wow.
So for me, what it was like before I even knew what being, I mean, even like all these things too, like the paintings, that's all me. Like I'm a very visual person as well.
You created all of that?
Yeah, like literally everything in view outside of this.
Goodness.
I can't blow glass yet, but man, I'd like to.
Wow, that is crazy. Wow, you are very artistic then. Wow.
Oh, and I'll even describe what there's a reason these two things also have a purpose, because I'm a psycho like that. But like when I was developing the idea for the book, before I even thought that it was going to be a book, I just naturally drew things because I also needed that visual. You know what I mean? I just needed that thing, and I can't tell you the amount of graphics that didn't make it into the book that I drew out. Just because, especially when I would finish a chapter and I was doing the editing of it. I have ADHD, which people always like think that just means that your brain is always wired, but it also means that like it just means that your like sense of attention is like it's like broken. You don't have a gauge, so like you can over obsess about things too.
Yeah.
And I would over obsess about a chapter when I was in the editing phase of it, to the point that like even when I wasn't editing at all, I would have to draw out a scene that was just stuck in my head. So that's how it started.
Right.
And from there, it just kind of grew on. And when I had all these things together and I have the entire idea of the book in one hand and I have all these graphics in another, I just felt that it was meant to be. They had to be merged.
Wow, that's actually pretty cool that you're able to piece those things together. Now, when you brought that idea to, well, before I even say that, did you have an editor? Because you first mentioned that you laid down pretty much all the information regarding the story, and then you cleaned it up and made it a little bit tidy. But did you have somebody that was editing along with you, or did you do that all yourself?
I did have a final editor when the entire thing was done. And I mean, I feel like my book was done, written, just like, rough manuscript, I think 2 years, if not more, than by the time that I actually handed it off to an editor. I really wanted to make sure that I truly back to back, no plot holes, nothing that come back at me. I sent it out to other people to make sure they couldn't find any plot holes. Just I try to lay it out as much as possible. And then when everything was like set and I knew that it wasn't a problem, or at least I believed I was comfortable enough with the story, I handed it off to an editor to make sure, that I used the right type of there, or like, the right type of a comma when it needed to be, things like that, that for as much as you want to work, you will miss at least 50. I don't care how nasty you are. I don't care how dirty you are. You're going to miss at least at least a couple. So I wanted to hand it off to a person to make sure they can do that. And they were great. It was a great process, honestly. I would definitely use them again.
Oh no, you've been doing a phenomenal job because wow, you're piecing together everything. Like wow, you really layered it through, thought it through. Like oh, did you do the art before even writing words and you just visually created it? And then you were like, okay,
Yeah.
this is what the story is gonna this is what the story is written, but I already have the visual progressive changes of the story.
Yeah, I don't know why my memory works in that way, but like let's say if I were to meet you at a bar, we could have a 3 hour conversation. If we meet tomorrow during brunch, promise you I'm gonna have to ask your name again. I'm sorry, it's just gonna have to be. I'll remember whatever you told me last night, but names just like escape me. You know what I
Yes,
mean?
faces don't.
But yeah, you know what I mean. Faces and like things that I hear don't escape me. So like I would say it took me about roughly 7 years. I don't know. Is that actually true? Well, I'm gonna say that because that's what I said last time, and I'm pretty sure I would have double checked my math then. So at 7 years, we'll say, it took me to develop my story, and I can tell you confidently that for the first 5 years of it, it was all mental. I never wrote anything down. It was just like a puzzle piece of me
Oh my gosh.
thinking how things would go on. I mean, if we want to, I don't know what like the rating of this is. You know, like how like I don't know graphic we get into stories, but like the story how it really originated. You know, because everything I'm talking about, even the Star Wars thing, it's not like I started writing the book that week or like even that month or even that year. That was just one of those things that like started getting my brain working subconsciously, mixed
Mm,
with like emotional things that were already happening with me. You know,
mhm.
what happens between Jid and Zako actually happened to me in college with one of my best friends from middle school that we had been best friends for all this time, and then when we get to college, we immediately get into like different things and just me philosophizing like why that happened, how people can view life in a certain way and like connect with certain people at one time, but then those things just shift and the connection shift as well.
Right.
And putting all those things together, and when it started getting into actual story, when I started bringing the idea of like aliens and other planets and all this technology, I was in engineering school and I would literally, you know, doing some herb in the bathroom with my friends, and it would just be a story to entertain people. Simply, it's
Oh,
something to have a conversation going. I would just be like, oh well, this is what I've been thinking about lately, and they would like go back and forth, and we would philosophize about that and whatever technology, and we would laugh and we would joke, and it was just that for 5 years. Five
but
years,
you
it
were
just
you were
grew into something
yeah,
like that
constantly brainstorming and developing
constantly.
the story until so then you were brainstorming first for a few years before you even decided to draw it, before you even decided to start writing it, before you even got people to review it, right?
Oh yeah.
Wow.
And if you want to talk about real meta, this painting right here
Mhm.
is related to the book, but I actually made it in high school. I didn't understand its meaning until later. It's just like
Whoa.
a vision that I had. I know I'm sounding like hella pompous, but like it was just like
Uh,
legitimately just like an idea that I had, and I thought it was just cool because what that depiction is uh, the maelstrom of universes. Like it is reality. It's like billions upon billions of universes and their copies and their reflections and everything. Just the mass of what reality is. And for what it's called of in like the series, it's called the Umbra, and that's what that is. And if you look right here in this painting,
mhm.
they actually share the same color scheme as like the center right here. And if you notice, there's like a little black dot right here, and that actually is the main characters of the book. That is the black hole. That is like the maelstrom that they're in, and that is within that. So it's kind of like the idea of like the universe. If you were to zoom in to this yellow point right here, this is what you would see.
Wow. And that was in high school?
So this one was made in high school. This one was made, I think, around year 3 of me developing the idea.
Oh my goodness. So you really did start on the visual aid, the visual aspects of the story, and then you threw in the melting pot concept, the conspiracy. Did you say that the aliens and that came last?
I don't know if it was last, but I know when it came up to the idea of I don't know if I'm getting too spoiler here, but I knew that I didn't.
You could deviate to I have 1,001 questions if you don't want to talk
Oh
about.
no! Believe me, I want to. I just, for example, it's like I knew that I didn't want anything to come off. I mean, the actions speak for themselves, but I didn't want any of the characters, Jid or Zako, to be like, oh, this is the good guy, this is the bad guy. The whole idea is that you read it and you interpret what you interpret as far as how that goes, good or bad. Is there good and bad? That's literally the whole point of that dynamic of as the reader to determine what it is. Paint. I mean, a good painting is just supposed to be a canvas for your emotions. That's the way I think about it. But everything that came after, when I came to the idea of like, all right, what's good with these action sequences? What's good with these like crazy scenes? One of my favorite things I love to just, I'm telling you, before I go to sleep sometimes I like to just like envision myself there is they live on a different planet called Neomer. And even that name right there, Neomer, why it's called that is a whole thing that I don't want to spoil. It's definitely very much explained in book 2, in volume 2, I should say. And Sector 5 is actually in a part where there is an insane concentration of carbon dioxide and oxygen. So to like primordial levels, for people that like knew like the whole reason the dinosaurs were so large and the reason like the trees were like as tall as skyscrapers back then was the overabundance of those two resources at the universe. I mean, in the planet at that time. And the reason things have gotten smaller is because like it's dissipated. So
I did not know that.
Listen,
and I love dinosaurs.
I'm not an authority, but I'm just like, for my understanding of it, that's how it is, and that's what I based the idea off of. And Sector 5 is in a pocket of that. So while the rest of the planet is relatively comparatively understandable, Sector 5 specifically is insanely overgrown. And for as much technology as they have, they cannot colonize it. They cannot get into it because it's just overgrown. If you try to build anything there, nature will consume it in 4 or 5 minutes flat. Every person that you have will die. It's understood. You do not mess with Sector 5. You just let that be. So when those type of things happen, that's when the idea of the aliens came in. And then that's when I brought in the anime influences, because I thought I was like, all right, how can I make a villain that feels like a villain, right? And I immediately thought back of like the villains that make me genuinely be like, oh damn, back when I was a kid. And without a question, it was Boo from Dragon Ball Z.
Hey.
And I'm talking about not Kid Boo.
Yeah, the witch Boo.
Not Majin Boo. I think it was like just Boo. Like when he was fighting fighting Gohan, because
Final
form. What I loved about it is that it was true no empathy, right? Cell, every time that you have like a villain like that, it's always like something that's like, oh well, in my planet I was bullied as a kid, so now I'm here to take your lunch. You know what I'm saying? It was always something that like, for as mean as it was, it was always something that was like, all right, well, I guess if I was bullied on, I'd probably be pretty bad too.
Yeah,
but like Boo was just complete like nothing. Like I remember the thing that I loved about it was even like the character's reaction to it, because Dragon Ball Z is known for these crazy standoffs that like they're standing in front of one another, doing one of these, doing the Vin Diesel, just staring, mean mugging one another and just like talking trash to one another. Oh yeah, well, your pants are mad baggy, but you got small shoes. Oh yeah, well at least my girl isn't blue. Just going back and forth, taunting. But Boo would show up and legit just start throwing hands. The moment he saw you, start throwing hands. And I remember the first time that happened, Gohan literally pushed me back and he was like, do you not understand the rules of combat? And Boo was like, just kept on hitting him. And that right there is what just I loved. It was that like it was a true killing machine. No empathy, no talk. Oh, I'm gonna get you back for what you did to my sister and 04. Nothing. That's what I was born for. You're in front of me. You gotta go. And that's why I developed Sergeant Z. I'm actually looking at him right now. I wish I could get a quick little picture. Man, I don't even know what chapter I have him in. I wish I could like get him up. You know, I might get him. I might get him. Yeah, screw it. Because he's one of the ones that I honestly love. Actually gonna get his counterpart too.
Is that his full name?
Yeah, so it's his full name is actually Zay, XE. But then he becomes
Dang! Oh my goodness! You even got his like rifle?
yeah. So that's actually it's actually called a rail cannon.
Oh
Yeah,
I love that thing in the bottom right corner. It reminds me of the Da Vinci human thing.
Yeah, exactly. So it's meant to like kind of like show his form without the armor around, what he looks like
That's
without.
so cool.
What it looks like. That's one thing I always messed up. That obviously doesn't have like a gender that we would understand.
Wow, that is amazing.
Yeah, and the thing that I liked about it, and that's actually why I actually love that you mentioned the thing about the rail cannon. So, you know, rail gun is like, you know, that the whole like thing, magnetic two poles, like, you know, like fires off things at like rapid speed. So I was thinking, it's like, all right, imagine if you house that in a cannon and then put what I call like a foundry refill, which is like, imagine a 3D printer.
Yeah.
Compact and small that prints different varying sizes of artillery that's actually neurologically connected to the user. So let's say that like you want a smaller bullet, you just like, you know, feel. I don't even know how that would work. Like you tell the gun, is it like a thing of like, hey, move your leg? Because you don't think when you move your arm. You get what I'm saying. You control it. And
like,
you shoot it off
with Neuralink.
Exactly, it's just connected Neuralink, and you can everything. I mean, even the point of like controlling the bullets mid-air, the direction. There is a great scene that like they're one of the favorite visuals of this person, and on top of that, just to make it like, how the hell are you going to beat them even more? Because again, that's the reason I love Boo so much. Like every other villain prior to that in like the Dragon Ball Z universe was like, all right, well, you know, they didn't lose that badly. Boo was wiping everybody out. So like I love the idea of like what that type of anxiety, what that type of like desperation does to a character, does to like the story. So I definitely want to find something like, how are you going to beat this? Because he rides a mount called Eclipse, which is a monster from the Rift. It's also called Venator, which is literally, it's the space between reality, the little things in between. Just a little pocket, it's a one little pocket universe. Can't even call it a pocket universe. It's just a pocket of matter. And beings that come from there, if they master like the temporal energies and like all the, you know, crazy sci-fi mumbo jumbo properly, they get to rift walk and just go in between things. And how I described it was the same way that you can go from here, same way that right after this recording, you'll go like, oh, I need to pee, and just watch the bathroom. Eclipse, like, oh, I need to go to the other side of the universe real quick. Whoop. It's just that type of, it's just what. So to make it more, how the hell are you going to beat this person? Zay has the rail cannon, and it's mounting on top of Eclipse. So this thing could literally, like, you shoot at it or you do whatever you want, it can just blink behind you and like you're into everybody. Everybody got to go. And the way that it could, and on top of that, it's also its brain is also controlled slightly by an AI in order to like help it like adjust like certain calculations. So
right.
Everything is controlled at like the most microscopic level. Let's say that like it shoots around at you and you somehow dodge it. It can just like reroute the bullets back to you, or it can pre-detonate it. So like if you somehow miss it, it still explodes and hits you in some direction. Like there is no way. Like the way I always envisioned it is that if it held the rail cannon up and just did one of these.
Yeah. And
just shot like an artillery fire, a salvo in the air, it would still hit anybody it wanted. So it's kind of like, how are you going to match that? And then the match that I had is Hans. This is like, you know, this is the Goku. This is like the response.
Yo, he's straight up melee.
Straight up melee, but with like a little twist. It's something that I can't like drop immediately, but the character basically has this connection to the blade in some way that it actually can throw it and it can get it back. It can will it back, but it's not just like a thing of it's not a thing of magic. It's an actual physical thing, an augmentation that they make.
Like an augmented knife that has like a boomerang kind of trait to it, but just way
Oh,
more sci-fi, futuristic level that I
yeah,
can't
except that no, yeah. Well, without getting too much into it, it's basically a transfusion of the blood. So like the same materials, like as the like literally like every person that like has his ability to be able to do what he does, what Haas can do. Their weapons that they use to do so are their weapons. If some other person from their tribe came and tried to took their weapon, they would just use it the same way you and I would, just holding it up, stabbing people. That is the limit of what they can do. Whereas, like when it's connected to you, when it's forged for you, when you do the entire process of commuting with this weapon, then it's something that you can control at will, even midair.
Man, like, oh, this is such an amazing world. The story, it layered, the inspiration, where it comes from. Oh my goodness, we're running out of time, and I want to ask
Yeah.
so many questions. Oh, it's so much. Okay. I'll try to be as brief as possible. Okay, so in your case, if you could go back to high school what would you tell yourself, or what advice would you give yourself if you had 5 minutes of time, only 5 minutes, in order to get yourself to start this either sooner or to give you a little bit of a nudge? Like what are either some things that you would tell yourself if you only have 5 minutes?
All right, I played football in high school only because I had like anger issues and it just seemed like the thing to do at the time. I was big and not like big strong. I was just fat, like mass. I was just like a big person. Like I wasn't even crazy athletic. I was just like big and like a wall, perfect for D line before anyone like mixed that up and get me doing some crazy stuff. But I would probably just tell myself to go back and be like, hey, listen, go to theater, my guy. Whatever it is that you have in your head, just go and hang out with the drama club. Those are really where your vibe is at. I didn't even understand that I wanted to write until I got the idea. I never wanted to be a writer. That's one of my favorite things when I like talk to people on my podcast is that a good 95% of the people I talk to are like, oh no, yeah, when I was like 13, I read a book and that's when I knew I wanted to be a bestseller. And I was like, wow, that's incredible. I did not feel that.
Yeah.
To me, writing became developed as a need. The obsession of the book literally got to the point that I'm not going to sit here and like how other authors was like, oh, the characters kept me up. I never felt like that. Zako wasn't tapping me on the shoulder when I was trying to go to sleep. It was just the general idea of everything, the grand mass of just the whole picture. Like I said, that's why I love this painting, because it literally is the whole picture. This one painting, it engulfs the entirety of every book that I will ever write. I have a good 20 lined up in the saga of compelling all this entire thing, and it's all literally within this one picture right here. And I think that is what I would tell myself, just simply like, hey, go back, hang out with the drama geeks, get more into that, dive more into your creativity side at like a younger age. I was painting around that time, but like nothing to what I started doing later on. And I had always been drawing and doing like my own little creative things when I was younger, but it were things that felt like a hobby. It didn't feel like it was a thing like, oh yeah, I mean, why not do this forever? And now that's all I want to do.
Well, that's great advice. I never thought about that. Hang out with the people that you actually are going to value in a couple of years versus just something that's a short-term solution versus a long-term. Like, oh, that's a great advice. Hey, if anybody's listening, you're still in high school or you're in college, even if it's your last year, if it's something that you so desire, just do it. Last question though. This is one of my favorite questions. I wanted to ask it in the beginning because you were just firing off so many. Your top 3 sci-fi series in order.
Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, number one, high one, like high one.
Okay.
Two, I would say Dune, just because that is, my God, so expansive, so insane. And then third one, man. Ooh, you know what? I feel like I'm gonna get really, man. Let me not. I feel that's like a little too controversial.
That's up to you.
Well, I don't know if I can be honest, especially lately, the Bible, and I know people are gonna be like sci-fi, you mother, but that has been a crazy inspiration for me lately. Like every time I read that thing, and obviously I was born Catholic, so like I definitely believe in like the possibility of all the secular thing, the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I love the point of view of looking at it as if it were a very low technological point of view of being visited by people that were of such higher technology that you would view them as gods. I think that
now now you
that,
spit.
that yeah, that has been really moving me a lot lately. Especially with watching that movie Nope, and I'm not going to get into the I'm not going to spoil anything about that, but just definitely Google biblically accurate angels. You know, you'll very first things that will pop up when you go to images, there will be actual images of like, you know, artist descriptions of word by word accounts of what it says in the Bible. They will literally highlight the scriptures and give you the quotes and, you know, the spark those references and all, what you want, and then it will have the actual picture on the side, and they look nothing like, you know, the little necklaces that you buy at at the mall. Nothing like it. They look very weird. So it's another thing that just, I guess, you going to. But, you know, I also want to lament every time I mention things like that. I come from a very religious like family, and I would never, you know, say those things in a way to make it seem like, oh, like the Bible is just like a thing. It changes lives everywhere, but I just love that point of view of it. Like just looking at it that way, and it just lets me take it to a way different, take my work anyway into a way other level, because again, it's the whole idea of perception. If we were visited by people of such higher technology, how would you not write it like the Bible's written? How wouldn't you? It's beyond your understanding.
No, yeah, that's why I like when you said, like, how would you describe your phone to somebody like the 1900s? Like, I don't know. Like, you'd be burned at the stake for, you know, practicing witchcraft. Oh, you can talk to somebody thousands of miles away instantly. Witchcraft, let's burn them at the stake. But oh my goodness, you've opened up my mind to so many new concepts regarding sci-fi, regarding layering stories, regarding creating stories, because your visual aid that came before the actual story, but then you were already brainstorming constantly trying to figure out what the story was, how does it look like in your brain, until you're like, okay, now that I know what it looks like up here, let me put it, let me put it down here. Okay, now that I see visually, now I need to describe it so somebody else can understand what I was thinking in the brainstorming session and what I was thinking in the actual creation process of the painting or the drawing. And now I just got to put words to it. And then once you created that, it's like, okay, now it's a little bit too complicated. Now let me simplify so that way I can get people to understand. Like, oh my goodness, like you have just dropped like a master class of creativity. Thank you so much for giving us all this. Please let us know, AR, where can our listeners follow you, find you, buy your material, support you, etc.?
Well, neotino.net is where you can find everything. That's the website, hub for absolutely everything. The podcast that I do, all the graphics. One of my favorite things that is on the website that I always feel is underutilized is there are free short stories, and all those short stories are, again, within this painting behind me. It might not be directly linked to Allegory of the End in a way that you pick up on, but it is, trust me. And there are a couple in there, and one of them particularly, which is called The Death of Prometheus, actually is tied into Allegory of the End, and it's actually a short story from the point of view of Zay. Because, you know, all the things that happened to to that unfortunate unfortunate villain that in Allegory of the End
Mm-hmm.
were done to it. It wasn't something that it willed for itself. And even the nature of Eclipse and the nature of the rail cannon aren't earthbound at all. So it's definitely something that happened later. So when you understand where that comes from and all those things, and yeah, it's all there. Make sure to do it. Neotino.net. For Instagram, it's Allegory of the End, ALLEGORYTHEENEND. Very simple. You can Google it. You can also Google A.R Mirabal. It's gonna pop up. It's just like in all the things that are there. And really, that's it. The main hub is neotino.net. It has all the social media links. It has YouTube. It has free things.
It
There's
has
all the stuff.
8-bit graphics, which I was just looking at for like 30 minutes because it's just like, yo, that's so cool. Like, what the heck? Yo, that's all I was like, yo, it's so artistic. Everything you got going on is so artistic. Like, oh my goodness. I was just looking at it for 30 minutes straight, just looping, like, wow, just amazingly well done website, guys. Please check out A.R Mirabal. He's doing amazing things with sci-fi. He's doing amazing things with the inspirations that he came up with. I really can't wait to see much, much more because as you keep doing this, you're going to keep figuring out what your niche is, what things you really like. Like, I really like how you mentioned the passion thing. Michael Jordan wouldn't be Michael Jordan if he wasn't passionate enough to want to dominate, not just play well, not just make a layup, but dominate. You know, if he was an accountant, is to be the best accountant. You know, in your case, like such a visually aided book. Like there's so many visual aids, so many visual cues. So thank you so much for giving us value, giving us an opportunity to take a glimpse because I know we could go out like hours and hours and hours on it. I got so many questions that like if it wasn't due to time, I would just be like pouring them out. Like there's so many, like from one little thing to another. I got like 15 questions, but you know, I'll keep it short so that way everybody has an opportunity to check you out. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe if you liked the show. Other than that, it's been an amazing interview. Thank you so much for giving us again some part of your day.
Thank you. Honestly, it's been phenomenal. Honestly.
Penpodcast, we are done.